welcome to another episode of the Senior Focus. I'm here with Robert Dwyer, the Executive Director of the Central Mass Agency on Aging. Bob, welcome back.
Nick, why don't you introduce yourself too? You are Nick Kaltzis.
I am the host of the Senior Focus, Nick Kaltzis, attorney Nick Kaltzis.
And it's great to be here with you.
Well, it's great to have you here with me. I thought we would talk a little bit about Medicare today. We'll talk about other things as well,
Sure.
but I thought we'd talk a little bit about Medicare. I think it's a frightening prospect when someone goes into the hospital and they think that services would be covered because of a hospital stay, but they're not categorized as, an inpatient. They're categorized as receiving what is it called, observational care?
Yes. And that's actually happened to me. So it's
Has
not
it?
just for Medicare.
Yeah.
It's for all levels of insurance. So even if you're a caregiver and you're not on Medicare and you go in, that's going to affect all your finances or anybody. I was held on observation for 3 days once. It was quite a bill that I got.
Oh, I can imagine it would be.
And we had to go fight it with the insurance company. And they eventually came around and said, well, we understand where you're coming from. You didn't know. And
How long ago was that?
This was probably, I would say, about 9 or 10 years ago.
Okay, I bet you if you fought it today, might be a completely different outcome than it was 10 years ago, just because they don't have any funds in the budget.
Well, that's probably true. I mean, the reality is I went in a few years later for something else. I don't want to give the impression that I'm always in the emergency room, but I occasionally have to go.
Yeah.
And I said to the doctor, look, you need to admit me. Don't just put me under observation. And he says, I have no control over that.
We'll talk about the fact that now there are new rules that pretty much tie the hands of the hospital administrators that indicate if they're inpatient or if they're holding someone for observation.
Well, that's what they do now, and I think that what we're seeing across the medical system is that they are changing all the codes, they are looking at all the definitions, and they are making things much more difficult to fit into the various boxes.
Right.
So you have to fit into a box now, and I know that sounds bad, and on some levels for some people it's not necessarily a good thing. But they're trying to cut costs. They're trying to make sure that whatever is being done with you in terms of care is the appropriate care, is the most appropriate care, is best practice. And yet at the same time, I don't think that medicine, all of medicine, has reached the point where you can walk into an office and the doctor can say, I know exactly what's going on with you.
Right.
So we need to do all these, we don't need to do all these. We can just do this one test and be sure. That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. So in terms of how the system is moving, patients need to be much more attuned to the fact that they have to be clear on how they feel and be able to express to their doctor and have that relationship with the doctor so that the doctor knows exactly what's going on with their bodies. Because otherwise, you're not going to fit into the box, and you're not going to be able to be clearly taken care of under the best practices, and that's when it starts getting murky, is when the doctors start doing all sorts of different tests to figure it out.
This morning in my office, a client came in, and his father was beside himself, worried about the home. The client's mother, the wife of the father, needed long-term care, nursing home care. And they were concerned, or the father was concerned about losing the home in the event, the wife had to go into long-term care. Now, I understand it's not, the same topic that we're discussing, kind of the same, in that what concerns me the most about this, whether a person is categorized as an inpatient or being held for observation, is the fact that in the event you have a 3-night overstay in the hospital, in the event you get discharged, you go into rehab, you go into a long-term care facility, there's Medicare coverage for up to 100 days. I say up to 100 days because I think it's very, very rare that you see a full 100 days anymore. They'll cover 20 days in toto, and then they'll cover the next 80 with a rather stringent copay. That's only if the hospital categorizes you as inpatient. If they hold you for observation, there's no coverage thereafter.
There's no coverage. And then that also affects how long you're able to stay out of the nursing home, and where do you go afterwards. So I know that this is all being looked at both the state and federal levels in terms of the stays, the observation, the admission, and lawmakers are attempting to clarify and make it easier for patients. But I'm assuming, and I know what happens when you assume, but it seems to me that the medical field, at least the insurers, are beginning to try to fight that because it's going to cost them money.
I'll give you a couple examples. Ann Callan, 85 years of age, fell, broke a couple ribs, spent 6 days in the hospital, and when she was discharged to a rehab center. And when she was in the hospital, she wasn't categorized as inpatient. They held her for 6 days, and they had her as being held for observation. And when she got out of the rehab, there was something like an $18,000 bill, like a rather significant bill. Medicare wouldn't cover any of it. It was a private pay. She was indebted to the tune of like $20,000. I think is a very scary thing. There is no Medicare requirement that the patient be told what status they're being held under, whether they're an inpatient or whether they are being held for observation. There's no rule or regulation that will, mandate the hospital to let them know what their status is.
I think it's very interesting that there's all sorts of things that you're supposed to know as a patient. They're supposed to be honest with you about your medical condition. They're supposed to be honest with you about your prognosis and what treatments happen and how the treatments might affect you, what side effects there may be. But for something like this, when it's going to hit maybe not just you, but your whole family and your future financially, that they're not going to have to release that information to you.
Right. Yeah, that's sad. It's a scary thing. We find that the claims for observation care rose from 828,000 in 2006 to more than 1.1 million in 2009. And I think clearly the reason for the increase in claims for observation care is that there are new rules and regulations that Medicare established. And there is actually we'll call it a task force that goes out and can sue a hospital in the event they don't comply with the rules and regulations established by Medicare, so that there can be a refund of the cash that's given to them by Medicare. I believe it's like $1 million. Wow. Is the last that I heard.
Mm-hmm. I think this fits into, when you look at the whole larger picture of healthcare reform, and the drive by the feds and now the state, and most states are involved in this now because of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, to stop hospital readmissions.
Right.
So if they're holding you for observation, you're not being admitted.
Right. Right.
So the perception is that the hospital readmissions means that the person is not getting the appropriate care or the appropriate discharge and come back in. But if they're only holding you for observation, they can still send you back home, and you can come back and be admitted, but it would not be a readmission. So that's also a part of this whole picture.
So a person can be, I don't want to use the word admitted, but a person can go to a hospital, they can get treatment, they can get tested, they'll have their meals, they can even sleep overnight in the hospital, but they're not necessarily admitted, they're only being held for observation. How is a person supposed to know what their status is?
Right, and unless they...
It's a scary thing.
It is a scary thing, and who's going to ask? oh, by the way, doc, am I being admitted?
Right.
Or am I just being held for observation?
Well, hopefully people understand the importance of the distinction between being held for observation and being admitted as an inpatient, and they do need to ask. Now, you do need to ask.
Now you do need to ask.
And I think the further we go into this Obamacare, the more important it will be for people to understand what status they're being held under, so that in the event they want to plan for the future or they want to know, where the long-term care costs are going to get paid from, there's more certainty of how those bills are going to get paid for. Otherwise, it's coming out of their pockets.
But I think that, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
But let's also face the fact that one of the things coming out of this healthcare reform is the need for every individual to take a personal responsibility
Right.
to understand their system, whatever they have, their insurance, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or even for those of us who are not yet to that point where we're receiving private insurance, to know what the scope of that insurance is, to take a part in understanding it, and not simply to rely on, I'll just call them later. Because that doesn't work, because that's when you're getting the bill.
And a lot of people will wait and will call later.
That's exactly true.
Right.
Now for my care, if one of my doctors recommends something, I call. Am I covered for this? Is this something that you're going to take care of?
Right.
If you take care of partly, how much am I going to have to pay of it? At least what's the percentage? You may not be able to give me a dollar amount, but is it 15%, 20%? What's very, very interesting to me is that the physicians themselves don't always agree with all this process.
Right.
They don't like all the process because it's putting them under a certain pressure too. And their reimbursements from Medicare particularly are getting less and less.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. Their reimbursements really have been slashed rather heavily. So, it's the whole healthcare system is in a state of flux right now, and it is a scary thing. I think the one thing that we can be heartened by is that in the event the hospital downgrades your status from inpatient to observation, at that point there is a Medicaid responsibility that the hospital let the patient know that the status has been downgraded and they're now under observation. Of course, I'm not quite certain the effect that has on a great many patients. For instance, Ed Timmons, 88 years of age. The guy had Alzheimer's disease. So when they tell him things, he doesn't really understand. And he was held for observation, I believe, for 4 days. And he was discharged to a rehabilitation center. His cost was $23,000. And to expect a gentleman like Ed Timmons, to have to, come up with that kind of money is, not an easy thing.
No, it's not an easy thing. And not only to come up with the money, but to remember that he has to come up with the money. And even if it was explained to him, for someone who is living with Alzheimer's, is that something they're going to understand? Is that something they're going to remember?
And the other thing I thought was particularly striking is that in the event you're held under observation, there's nothing to appeal. They're not denying you treatment. They're categorizing the treatment that you receive under a different category. So if you don't like the fact that you're being held under observation, like you said, you can call, you can try to redress the issue after the fact, but I think because of the new rules and regulations, it's very difficult to have your status changed.
I'm not sure if you can have your status changed.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a deep down issue that's going to have to be addressed for all Americans, not just the elders, but all Americans.
We're going to head to a break right now. When we come back, I want to talk about following the rules for Medicare.
Millbury Healthcare Center is a highly respected 5-star deficiency-free skilled nursing and rehabilitation center. We are renowned for our compassionate care and specialty programming, making it possible for your next step, returning home. We listen and take the time to understand your goals. We provide support and the tools needed to safely prepare for your transition home. Millbury Healthcare Center is the community choice for skilled nursing and rehabilitation.
Does your loved one suffer from memory impairment, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease? Consider Dodge Park Rest Home in Worcester. Our geriatric medical team and nursing staff are available 24 hours a day. We offer medication administration and incontinence care with dignity. Our activity programs are designed to engage and stimulate the mind. And with Dodge Park Rest Home, you can better protect your estate and save your assets with only a 1-year look back. Your loved one will feel safe and at home with Dodge Park Rest Home of Worcester.
Are you searching for health answers? Want to find the best local healthcare specialists? Go to chartertv3.com. Our weekly health watch covers all the local health news you need to know. Go to chartertv3.com and click on worcester.md. You can find the best local healthcare professionals, get articles, watch videos, and rate your doctor all with one click. So tune in to Charter TV3 or go online to chartertv3.com/health and access the best local health resources. Charter TV3 and chartertv3.com. Always on.
I know everybody agrees with me that it's wonderful to see construction cranes in Worcester, despite the economy. We've got the mall going down, we've got buildings going up. Here in the Canal District, we've got streetscape happening. The colleges are all building. Things are happening in Worcester. We hope to be talking about all the issues that affect Worcester. There's a lot of development going on despite the economy, a lot of interesting politics, always our share of scandal and whatnot, and we hope to have a lively repartee.
Help the American Cancer Society save lives and create more birthdays by joining the Relay for Life of Worcester, sponsored locally by Charter Communications and Charter TV3. Relay is a unique community overnight event that allows teams of families, friends, and co-workers to join together in the fight against cancer. Form a Relay team this year and make a difference. There are 14 relays taking place throughout Central Mass this year. For more information on a Relay event in your area, visit cancer.org and register your team today.
I'm Andy Lacombe from Worcester News Tonight. Thank you for choosing Charter.
Welcome back to the Senior Focus. You know, Bob, I wanted to talk about following the rules, so to speak. It indicates that over a 3-year period of time, this, we'll say, aggressive posture for Medicare to try to seek the reimbursement of, fees that it says it inappropriately paid to hospitals. 6 states, 3 years, $1 billion. That's a huge amount of money.
That is a huge amount of money.
And now we find that they're going to roll that project out over all the states.
Well, we know that this has been something that Medicare has been doing for years,
Right.
On various levels. Mm-hmm. They established a program several years ago using volunteers to help recoup dollars on behalf of individuals as regards to how they were dealt with by their physicians through physicians' practices. We used to call them the Medicare police. Where there could be complaints that were issued or things that were followed up.
It is the Medicare police.
And this is a different level
Right.
of the same type of program.
And when you indicated that they're trying to prevent an unusually high rate of preventable readmissions, it's exactly what's going on. And when you think that right now, the project is, overseeing 6 states. Now they want to roll it out to all the states, in the union. I think that there is a lot of distress coming in the field of healthcare.
There's a lot of changes coming overall, and I think that the key is this readmission piece. There's a flow of grants now under Section 3026 of the Affordable Care Act that's forcing, and I say force, but because that's the only way to get the money to these organizations, hospitals, to work with community-based organizations to do transitions coaching. So to use this Coleman model, which came out of Colorado, or similar models, where someone who has been in a hospital and goes home receives a visit from this transitional coach, and it helps the individual understand the orders, looks at all their medications, and makes sure that the person is at least motivated and willing to follow doctor's orders at that point, hoping that that in itself will prevent readmission. So it's this policing of everything that's going on in terms of Medicare payments and Medicaid payments, because the perception is that this is all going down to a black hole. And people are using the system, they're making the best of the system for their own good, and not necessarily the good of the patient. That's what they're looking at. But I think the converse becomes who's going to get it in the end. And I don't mean it in terms of reward, who's going to be punished in the end, who is going to reap, if not the benefits, then the grim reap of the end of this whole action. And the fear is, and I think you share this fear, is that it's going to be the elders, the poor disabled adults who may not get the care they need, who will be under observation and not admission, who will be charged these enormous fees because a hospital is concerned about their readmission, so they don't want to admit them to begin with. They'll hold them under observation.
I think I use much stronger language than you. I find it's going to be a tremendously distressing situation for a lot of people that need public benefits, that need help paying their bills. And, you know, the sad fact is there's an extreme shortage of funds, and, you know, it is what it is. It's going to be much more difficult to become eligible for public benefits in the future. It's all a situation of, like I say, knowledge is power. The more a person knows about a particular subject, and the earlier they know that, the better off they are. And talking about being able to get education or being able to become educated, there's an event that's coming up that you're involved with.
Yes, it's called Elder Care 2012, and it's going to be held May 8th. At the Manor Restaurant. It's a yearly event that we participate with, and there will be providers from all over the region who will be there with information. So it's not only going to be Central Mass Agency on Aging, but for example, you'll be there. You've been there every years.
Right.
Elder Services of Worcester, Jewish Family Services may be there, Family Services of Worcester, all the nonprofits, you know, VNAs,
There are many
Community Legal Aid.
exhibitors.
100 or so of exhibitors who will be there. So not only are there going to be the booths, there will also be seminars that will be held in terms of this education. You know, this knowledge is power. Trying to educate consumers, elders, their caregivers, whether they are family caregivers or professional caregivers. It becomes ultimately important for us all to know what we can do to make lives better for people. So whether it's one of the seminars, for example, will be mindfulness, meditation in everyday life. You know, talk about caregiver stress. How is that going to help someone who is caregiving? What that will do with them to allow them to alleviate that stress in their life.
You know, I had on my radio program on Monday Lynn Garrett's, and she is the wellness coordinator for Simon's Herd Center in Lemser at the Health Alliance Hospital, also affiliated with UMass.
That's right. That's right.
And it seems like, you know, the acceptance of, we'll say, as Lynn says, complementary medicine is really taking hold in this country. Whether it's meditation, whether it's Reiki, acupuncture, chiropractic services, massage, a lot of other, we'll say, complementary techniques really help people. And that would be, as Lynn also says, complementary with an E, not with an I.
Well, that's very, very true. I think a lot of that study actually was pioneered at UMass through John Kabat-Zinn, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. The mind-body connection, which I think was the name of his book,
Yeah.
really shows that our healing process is very much tied to our stress level or to all the other things that go on in our lives. So that if we can de-stress, then our healing power increases. So that becomes very important when you're talking about the mindfulness piece. So that's one of the seminars that will be going. Obviously, you'll be offering a seminar on strategies for legal planning, VA benefits, etc. And that has been one of the most popular seminars we've had over the last several years, especially around the VA benefits. They change constantly.
Right.
They are so confusing.
And most striking of all, it's a benefit that most veterans don't know that they're entitled to.
Right.
Never mind a spouse of a veteran. A spouse of a veteran is entitled to those benefits as well. And particularly in the climate of the Deficit Reduction Act and it becoming more and more difficult to become eligible for public benefits, in the event someone is eligible for VA benefits, tremendously important that they know that and that they proactively go out and seek those benefits, because it's not like the VA is going to be knocking down your door and telling you,
That's right.
hey, we have money for you, hey, we have money for you. But for those people who are otherwise eligible, it's a very important benefit that they might be able to use to stay at home for as long as they can. And I've been in this line of work, I've been a lawyer for like 25, 26 years, and everyone wants to stay in their homes. There has been one person, one or two people that I've seen that wanted to go into a nursing home, but the very vast majority of all people want to be able to stay in their homes as long as possible. It takes planning and some forethought to make that happen.
That's right. That's right, I agree. So in addition to that, there'll also be a yoga presentation.
Right.
Now, yoga has become very important. Again, it's one of these complementary type of things. And they'll be fun. You know, there'll be ballroom dancing, there'll be drumming to teach people how to drum. Excuse me. So, and every organization has a raffle at the end.
Right.
You must be there to win, as we are told. I know that for our agency.
That's a very popular event, the raffle.
Very popular event. Yeah. Central Mass Agency on Aging this year is offering a garden chair, one of those folding lawn chairs with a huge Red Sox logo on it. So we don't want to talk too much about the Red Sox today.
No, we don't want to talk about the
But
Red
a lot of
Sox.
people still love the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Well,
You know, I love the Red Sox. They're not doing so well, but you know what? Maybe they can turn it around. If you're not going to play well, it's better to not play well at the beginning of the season than to not play well, as we know, at the end of the season,
But
like
that happened
last year.
both last year.
Yeah.
So
That did.
Let's not get into Bobby
Yeah.
Valentine. So anyway, those are the things happening on May 8th. And it's always a great time. It's a great opportunity to learn things, a great opportunity to meet people, to understand the network of services, and obviously also to learn so much about what's going on.
And they can also learn about their own bodies because there are health screenings and information that's available. I saw the information, whether it's a blood pressure screening or a grip strength screening, stress analysis, glucose, medication review. There's a lot of things that are offered to the public, and it's important that they go there and they make themselves aware of the information that's offered.
That's right.
And it isn't restricted geographically, is it?
Oh, not at all.
So
anybody and everybody.
It happens that it's held in
West Boylston.
West Boylston, but if someone from out of central Massachusetts wants to attend, they're more than welcome to attend.
We often
aren't
have
they?
people coming in from Clinton, from Fitchburg, from Millbury, Oxford. They all come in, all through the charter area. Certainly welcome to come in and be a part of this. You can learn more about it through our website, www.seniorconnection.org. You can find out there what's going on. And again, it's May 8th, and it's like from 10 to 3
Right.
on that day at the Manor. So there'll be usually coffee and other goodies there in the morning.
Like I say, knowledge is power. It's so important that people educate themselves of the many, many different topics that are available at the elder care, and they need to be proactive and go there and learn that information. We're going to head to a break right now, but when we come back from the other side of the break, I'd like to talk about Alzheimer's disease. I think I might have heard something that it's the disease of our generation.
Does your loved one suffer from memory impairment, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease? Consider Dodge Park Rest Home in Worcester. Our geriatric medical team and nursing staff are available 24 hours a day. We offer medication administration and incontinence care with dignity. Our activity programs are designed to engage and stimulate the mind. And with Dodge Park Rest Home, you can better protect your estate and save your assets with only a 1-year look back. Your loved one will feel safe and at home with Dodge Park Rest Home of Worcester.
Millbury Healthcare Center is a highly respected 5-star deficiency-free skilled nursing and rehabilitation center. We are renowned for our compassionate care and specialty programming, making it possible for your next step, returning home. We listen and take the time to understand your goals. We provide support and the tools needed to safely prepare for your transition home. Millbury Healthcare Center is the community choice for skilled nursing and rehabilitation.
Are you searching for health answers? Want to find the best local healthcare specialists? Go to chartertv3.com. Our weekly health watch covers all the local health news you need to know. Go to chartertv3.com and click on worcester.md. You can find the best local healthcare professionals, get articles, watch videos, and rate your doctor all with one click. So tune in to Charter TV3 or go online to chartertv3.com/health and access the best local health resources. Charter TV3 and chartertv3.com. Always on.
They believe that when apocalypse strikes on December 21st this year, the aliens waiting in their spacecraft inside Pic-Bogarash will save all the humans nearby and beam them off to the next stage. You want to go, Mike? Can we do a remote from there? This is not like, here I am, Lord, take me.
They don't travel light.
No. These people are going with all of it. I think the dog, the cat, the parakeet, the goldfish, the mother-in-law, everyone's going.
Consider donating new or gently used books at sites around Worcester for the 6th annual Worcester, the City That Reads book drive. The committee hopes to collect 26,000 books this year with the goal to provide summer reading material to children who may not otherwise have access to books. The books for children in pre-kindergarten through grade 8 are being accepted at this time. Donations are accepted at the following locations, and book collections are also being held by Worcester Public High Schools, Worcester colleges and universities, private schools, and organizations.
I'm Kristen Doucette from Worcester News Tonight. Thank you for choosing Charter.
Welcome back to more Senior Focus. Bob, Alzheimer's disease. I read that some are calling it the defining disease of the boomer generation. Do you think that Alzheimer's disease has reached epidemic proportions? Some people think that it has.
Well, I think a lot depends on how you're going to define epidemic, but I think the awareness of it is allowing it to rise to that level, certainly.
Right.
I mean, obviously, it's not like it's a brand new disease. And when Alois Alzheimer's identified it, that was what finally brought the pieces together and allowed people to make that diagnosis. So whether it's the defining disease of our generation, perhaps I think cancer might have been the defining disease of our parents' generation. And maybe this in the same way, even though right now we're seeing it more in our parents' generation than we are in our own. I think there's so many diseases that are rampant that I'm not sure there's going to be one final defining disease, but I think with the Alzheimer's, it's something that far more people will be affected by. whether it's Alzheimer's or another related dementia, because we are living longer. And the longer that we live, the longer we're prone to get something like an Alzheimer's or a related dementia that's going to affect all of the people in our lives, not just us. Alzheimer's is not an individual disease. Alzheimer's is a family disease, because even if you don't have Alzheimer's, you will end up probably caring for someone with Alzheimer's or know someone in your family with Alzheimer's.
You know, I had a number of different physicians and surgeons on. We discussed and talked about the care and even the cure of cancer. So I think that today, a diagnosis of cancer doesn't mean the same thing that it might have meant 15, 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Maybe 15 or 20 years ago, you had a diagnosis of cancer. It's kind of like having a diagnosis of Alzheimer's today. I think I read somewhere that it's the only disease in the top 10 common ailments that have no treatment to either slow the progression of the illness or cure the illness.
Right, all the treatments that are there in terms of slowing the illness may or may not work.
Right.
It depends on the individual, depends on their body chemistry. I think that the big difference between Alzheimer's and cancer, as you said, the diagnosis of cancer at least used to be a death sentence. It's not so much anymore, depending upon when it's found, what kind of cancer it might be, etc. With Alzheimer's, it's not so much a life or death sentence, but it is the death of the person sentence, in the sense that at some point, as your Alzheimer's progresses, the person that you know dies, goes away.
Right.
They may live, physically live,
Right.
but that identifying feature of what makes that person, aside from their face, their whole personality is altered or even disposed of, in a sense, by the progression of this disease. And so they no longer know themselves, much less know you, and you no longer recognize them for who they are.
Yeah, it's a truly cognitive impairment that they suffer, and a person can be otherwise healthy and can live for a long time with this disease.
They can live a very long time with this. And in my days working in adult day health centers, I remember people who had been there, it seemed, for years and years and years, and you saw the progression of the dementia. And at that point, we weren't sure if it was Alzheimer's or it's from Parkinson's or Lewy body or whomever, or whatever disease it might have been. It was just all dementia to us, and we used to just say it was Alzheimer's because that's the word we knew. But to see that and how it would progress and how the person would change and end up completely into themselves. You know, nothing going out to the world, nothing, no personality to reach out to, how satisfied they may or may not be, depended upon how you treated them at the moment, not about their personality in their past, but how you treated them at the moment. And if you left them with a happy feeling, they were much better to see you the next time, because it was the feelings that they remembered with that face. It was the feelings. So, but they would live and live and live and live. So that now when someone gets a diagnosis of early Alzheimer's, that person knows that they have one heck of a long journey to go. Working in one of the adult day health centers, a gentleman came in and he had early Alzheimer's. He was in his mid-50s. Now this is a gentleman who had been nearly a concert-level pianist.
Yeah.
And he could not remember more than one or two chords from any song that he had ever played. And if you put music in front of him, it was gibberish.
And they say that music is one of the soothing and healing aspects of treatment for Alzheimer's. I sponsored the Glenn Campbell event here in Worcester at the Hanover Theater, and well, I can tell you, I was struck by the quality of his music. I mean, he remembered enough, I suppose, where, he played a great guitar.
Right, and luckily, I mean, he's able to take the fact that he has the early stages of Alzheimer's,
Right.
and still do what he loves to do, and at some point he's going to wake up and he's not going to be able to do it again.
I mean, you could see that there was a lot of care that was exhibited by his children that were also on stage in his band, and they really did watch him very closely. And you could detect, there were certain issues that he had, but it really was a nice event, and it was used to try to raise people's awareness of the disease. Do you know that 5.4 million people suffer from the disease, and 5.1 million of them are over the age of 65? So, clearly, as far as risk factors are concerned, age is, I think, the predominant risk factor.
Oh, it is. And it is for almost any disease, that any time that we live long, we're more prone to get something or develop a disease. Alzheimer's does happen to be one of those more prominent ones. We almost expect everybody, oh yes, well, they got cancer. We expect someone who's getting old, that's the first thing you think of when they're sick. Maybe they have the big C.
Right.
But as we've said now, that kind of diagnosis is no longer the sentence that it was.
I was surprised when the physicians told me that when they began using the word cure, I mean, it was foreign to me. I didn't think that there was a cure. And I specifically asked them, and they said, hey, if it's detected early enough, yes, we'll be able to cure the cancer.
Right. But, at this point, I think they'd love to be able to say that about Alzheimer's.
And I think they're trying hard, but they're not there yet.
They're trying very, very hard. They are not there yet. And we still need to not only put some money into that research, but also to work with the people who are caregivers for folks with Alzheimer's. So if you're saying 5.4 million people have or will develop Alzheimer's at a certain age, then the reality is that they will all have caregivers.
Right.
And those caregivers also need to be helped. When you start looking at the cost of caregiving, and we can talk about it at every level. The personal cost of caregiving for someone with Alzheimer's, when you're up, there's a book out there, an old book now, called The 36-Hour Day. It seems that your day never stops.
Right.
Because you're always caring for someone. What does that mean in terms of a job? Can you hold a job while you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's? If you're trying to hold a job, is there lost production? What does that mean for your employer? If your employer is losing production, what does that mean then at the next level for the gross national product? What's the impact on the entire economic system of the nation, but then obviously your family, and what does that mean? So you've got the emotional piece of dealing with someone who has Alzheimer's, as well as the financial piece of what it means to have to care for someone with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, the financial piece is rather striking. They say that by the year 2050, the incidence of people diagnosed with Alzheimer's will increase threefold from where it is today. And as you'd mentioned, the care that's necessary and the expense necessary to care for these people who can otherwise be very healthy physically but just have a cognitive impairment is tremendously expensive. And I see something here that says that they think 10 million baby boomers will have Alzheimer's disease or will get Alzheimer's disease. Probably the most expensive part of healthcare that there is. I spoke with a gentleman from the Alzheimer's Association, and he was of the opinion that in the event they can find a cure for Alzheimer's, it's going to help tremendously with the Medicare budget. They won't have to pay so much money.
Well, I would think also then with the Medicaid budget, because so many folks with Alzheimer's end up in long-term care. So when you're looking at the whole budget, yes, I mean, if they can cure any disease, it will help with the healthcare financing across the board.
Right.
And now with the prevalence of Alzheimer's, we will see that if they can come up with a cure or a definitive treatment for it, then that will also have a positive effect upon the healthcare financing of the disease.
Do you know they say in the year 2050, every 33 seconds, someone will develop Alzheimer's? It's a frightening statistic. But at this point, we're going to head to another break. When we come back, we'll finish up our discussion on Alzheimer's disease.
Sounds great.
Millbury Healthcare Center is a highly respected 5-star deficiency-free skilled nursing and rehabilitation center. We are renowned for our compassionate care and specialty programming, making it possible for your next step, returning home. We listen and take the time to understand your goals. We provide support and the tools needed to safely prepare for your transition home. Millbury Healthcare Center is the community choice for skilled nursing and rehabilitation.
Does your loved one suffer from memory impairment, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease? Consider Dodge Park Rest Home in Worcester. Our geriatric medical team and nursing staff are available 24 hours a day. We offer medication administration and incontinence care with dignity. Our activity programs are designed to engage and stimulate the mind. And with Dodge Park Rest Home, you can better protect your estate and save your assets with only a 1-year look back. Your loved one will feel safe and at home with Dodge Park Rest Home of Worcester.
When we walk together, we are bigger than cancer. Join the world's biggest fight for more birthdays, the American Cancer Society Relay for Life. Find your community's event at relayforlife.org.
Join me on the Hank Stoltz Experience. You know, people are always asking me, what is the experience? Well, that's the beauty of it. It's everything that has to do with Central Massachusetts, from the politics of the region to the great events that are going on each and every weekend or every night right here in Central Mass. It's everything that's going on. It's everything that you want to know about. And just like Kelly Square, where the traffic never stops, we never stop either. There's no red lights on the Hank Stoltz Experience, only on Charter TV 3.
Tired of weather reports that don't focus on Central Mass? Introducing Worcester Weather, the only video weather report for Worcester. Worcester Weather is easily accessible 24/7 by visiting chartertv3.com and is updated throughout the day to give you the best video forecast possible. Worcester Weather also airs at 5 p.m. during the Jordan Levy Show and every Worcester News Tonight telecast. Worcester Weather gives you the local forecast you have always wanted. Worcester Weather on Charter TV 3 and chartertv3.com. Brought to you by Berterra Nissan of Auburn.
I'm Melissa Tupin from Worcester News Tonight. Thank you for choosing Charter.
Welcome back to the Senior Focus and our final segment of the day. We were talking about the cost. I'm looking at some cost numbers here. Apparently in 2010, the cost of care for Alzheimer's disease, the government spent $172 billion. By 2050, over $1 trillion. Staggering numbers. I'm not sure that I or any of the people that are watching can really fathom the amount of money being spent on Alzheimer's care.
Well, let's face it. Most of us can't fathom the amount that Tom Brady makes in a year to begin with. In terms
I think he might make just about this amount.
Not that much. But the reality is no. We can't. None of us can.
Right.
You know, the amount that gets spent on any disease research, and in this case, Alzheimer's in particular, it's outrageous. And yet, without it, where would we be?
Right.
You know, so yeah, we're spending a lot. We're spending a lot on caregiving. We're spending a lot on research, on trying to understand things. But if we don't spend that money,
right,
it'll be just another lost generation.
I think maybe they should spend more money on the research. I saw somewhere that the position was, hey, you're going to pay sooner or later. And I think that you probably want to pay sooner and try to find a cure and try to take some of the costs on the back end out, because these are astronomical figures.
They are astronomical, but I think you need to balance the need to care for people with Alzheimer's now.
Right. I
so
understand.
So that's what you're balancing out.
Yeah.
You know, is where does the money go? So virtus stat in media res. You know, virtue stands in the middle of things.
Right.
So trying to find that balance, that in between area, so you can care enough for people who have the disease and yet still put enough into the research so that the future generations will benefit more and more.
You know, you take a look at the population and the segment of the population comprised of individuals 65 years of age and older, and it's like a huge tidal wave crashing down on us. Right. And as we've already mentioned and as we've already established, age is the leading risk factor in developing the disease. And we see the cost of care swing almost out of control. I mean, it really is. And I think before all of these seniors develop a disease like Alzheimer's disease, the more that we can spend in research, the better. I understand, you know, balancing, and there does need to be a balancing between the care that's provided and the research that's afforded for a cure of the disease. But with a little bit of forethought, you know, looking at what is coming, it's a frightening, frightening proposition.
It is a frightening proposition. I think from the standpoint of, for example, the Area Agency on Aging, what we see the need for is the care. We're not going to deny the need for the research, but we're the ones who are in the trenches with the Alzheimer's Association, with other local nonprofits, and seeing the effect of the caregiving on those who do the care, but also, and of course, on the people who suffer the disease. So, you know, when we're trying to balance the finances that we have,
right.
We'd like to see more money given into certain areas too. You know, I mean,
let's talk about some of those areas. Do you know that for research, 2011 numbers, $6 billion on research for cancer, $4 billion for research on heart disease, $3 billion on research for HIV. Alzheimer's disease, $480 million. They need to take some of the funding that's provided for the research in some of these other diseases and funnel
switch
it.
them over.
Yeah, because, you know, I think they've made significant progress in cancer, and I think they've made significant progress in heart disease as well. And even with HIV, I'm not saying that it's a curable ailment. I think there's been some significant progress, and I'm not suggesting that I have the formula that they should use. I just know that to see an Alzheimer's disease research funded at $480 million, when you can see, excuse me, and you can see in the future this tidal wave of seniors and the prospect that Alzheimer's disease is going to cost so much money for the care of, and we only see $480 million being spent on research is, I think, you know, mismanagement. I don't want to say gross mismanagement, but it's a sad state of affairs relative to the research that's necessary for Alzheimer's disease.
Well, you know, I understand where you're coming from, and I can't say that I agree with you. So that being said, let me explain why.
Okay.
As the Central Mass Agency on Aging, as you know, funds a lot of grants. And our grant funding is based upon needs assessments.
Right.
All right. So once we find the needs assessment, we set priorities. What we have seen is that those areas where we have put money and grants to service, those needs have been filled.
Right.
Okay, so the priority levels have changed. But we know if we start pulling money from those needs that have been filled and put them somewhere else, then the balance is going to go back again.
Right.
So, you know, I understand what you're saying, but it could be that the cure for heart disease is this close. The real cure for cancer, the full cure, is this close.
Right.
And you start pulling money away from that, what are you going to do? I think the reality is, yes, more money needs to go into Alzheimer's research. Absolutely.
Right.
But does it need to come from those items? Probably not. Are there other areas that have a lot of stuff that can be trimmed? I was going to say trim the fat, but that's not something that I'd like to talk about. Is there another area where that can be trimmed and put towards Alzheimer's? More than likely. Okay, now you're going to see what you're going to do.
Did you know that for every $100 that the government spends in research for Alzheimer's, they spend $25,000 for the care of Alzheimer's?
Okay, I'm not going to argue with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, What's happening here is that you're getting my pacifist thing built up.
Okay.
And I'm saying to myself, how many bombs, if we didn't make them,
Right.
could we put towards that?
Right.
You know, how many other things? It's like hunger.
Right.
You know, all the hunger in this country, and we could go through down the line. You know, right now we're talking about Alzheimer's, but there's so many other issues that can be or could be addressed in a far more developmental way, a more positive way, if the priorities of Congress, of the White House, were a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that, again, I have a formula for, the funding of the research that's necessary for Alzheimer's disease. I just know there needs to be, as you had indicated, a total restructuring and revamping of the budgetary system.
Yes.
Because there isn't going to be sufficient resources and funds to do everything that has been laid out there. And, I would have to say that I think it all starts with the stimulus, no more stimulus. But in any event, let's move on. Let's, very quickly, because we only have a couple minutes, there has been a law or a bill that's been submitted in the Commonwealth, a stand your ground law similar to the one in Florida. What's your take?
My take on it is it's a very dangerous law. I think people, as has probably happened in Florida, can take it as a license to kill. And I think that's very, very dangerous. Now, I own a firearm. All right? I don't carry it with me. I think it's a dangerous thing. The few times when I've had it with me, it's been, I'm a nervous wreck.
Right.
Either that I'm going to misuse it or that it's going to get stolen from me or whatever. So it is under lock and key. So why do I have it? I do have it for some protection of my homestead.
Did you know I've been shot?
No, I didn't.
And I can tell you, guns scare me.
I've been held up at gunpoint.
Yeah, no, that's a scary thing. In fact, I was held up at gunpoint, but one better than that. In any event, apparently the Stand Your Ground law in Massachusetts has bipartisan support, both Democrats and Republicans. I think a huge part of the problem is that there was a politicalization of the Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman controversy in Florida. I mean, it might have good parts to it, might have bad parts to it, but I think that the handling of the event, we'll call it the event in Florida, was a fiasco. I think that it was a politicalization. If they had enough evidence to charge the guy, they should not have waited a month or so to do it.
And I agree. Frankly, I have an old high school friend. I shouldn't call her old, but she's not going to see this. She is an assistant state's attorney in Florida. And she wrote to me that she feels very lucky that this was not in her district. So they have been fighting this law and the results of this law since it was put into law. So that's something that they're very aware of and that they want to modify to be much more beneficial to all the population.
Bob, we're at the end of our program.
are.
I want to thank you for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate being put on the spot by gun laws. So go ahead.
Join us next week for the Senior Focus. If you have any questions on today's program, feel free to visit the seniorfocus.com website, or you can give me a call at 508-755-6525. And of course, thank you for watching.